everybody, Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee, where we talk about life, leadership, and legacy. We want to help you unleash your capacity and level of leadership. I'm so excited that you are here today. But before I introduce my very special guest, if you will do it right now, go and subscribe to Leading with Lee on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. Well, I'm super excited because the two guests I have today are members of the Mississippi House of Representatives. They represent District 68 and District 41 in the House. And these two individuals have been advocates for voting rights in our state. Please welcome to Leading with Lee, Representative Zakiya Summers and Representatives Kabir Karriem. How are you all doing today?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Outstanding. Thank you for having us. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes. I'm looking forward to the conversation too. I take it as a privilege to talk to folks about what's going on. And so let's jump right into it. Representative Summers, I'm going to give you all a little bit of time to kind of share about your background and share about yourselves. So I'll start with you, Representative Summers, and then Representative Karriem, you can share right after.
Well, again, thanks for having me. As you stated, I am a state representative. I have the honor of representing House District 68. My district covers portions of Hinds and Rankin counties, specifically West Jackson, Pearl, Richland, and Flowood. I'm serving my second term, getting ready to serve my sixth session. So I came into the House in 2020. And during this term, I'm serving on 5 committees. They are county affairs, drug policy, tourism, technology, and workforce development. As you also stated, I've been a long-time voting rights advocate and activist. I came into politics as an election commissioner and quickly found out that, I couldn't just be a spectator of the game. I had to be a player of the game. I saw how many individuals in my district had been disenfranchised, and Representative Karriem and I know all too well that process towards voter restoration can be very cumbersome and arduous. And so we're doing all that we can to make sure that Mississippians have an unfettered access to the ballot box. But I'm also a wife, mother of 3 sons. I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I sit on many boards and serve in many organizations doing community work. That is my passion. And, just to wrap it up, my 3 core values are my faith, my family, and my freedom. And defending in this legislative process. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Karriem, mind sharing, sir?
Sure. Again, thank you so much for having me on your show this evening. My name is Kabir Karriem. I represent House District 41. That encompasses Lowndes County, the city of Columbus. I previously served as a 2-term Columbus City Councilman before entering the legislature. This is my 3rd term. But criminal justice reform has always been my niche. Even as a city councilman, I was able to persuade my colleagues then to pass policy that gave formerly incarcerated and formerly people who were felons the right to work for the city of Columbus. We were one of the first in the state to do that because you can't discriminate because you have a felon. And I was happy to get that passed. So I brought that passion to the legislature, and there we've been, putting on that armor every day, fighting the good fight for the people of Mississippi. And, inch by inch, crawl by crawl, we're trying to pass legislation to not only enhance the quality of life for the people of Mississippi, but just make life better for all Mississippians. So again, I'm happy to be on your show, and but I would be remiss I am I belong to a plethora of boards and organizations, but the number one organization that I'm affiliated with are the proud men of Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated, Eta Phi Lambda chapter, uh, and we're doing the good work. Again, thank you so much for having us.
Yes, sir. So again, like I said, thank you all so much for being on. So let's jump right in. As you well know, we have an election coming up. When this episode comes out, it'll be about a week or two before the election. And I just want to ask you all, what are some of the things that people should be aware of this cycle, and how could it affect their lives directly? And I'll start with you, Representative Green.
Look, democracy is on the line. We know from past experiences what one of these candidates are capable of doing. We can't take anything lightly. We have to get our election plan together. We have to take people to the polls. We have to make sure that everybody with breath in their body, this particular election, is going to the polls and vote. And I know it's cliche-ish to say this is the most important election of our lifetime, but guess what? This is the most important election of our lifetime. And we have to go to the polls and vote like that. And I just pray that we will do all we can while we can to make sure that our family members, our friends, and the members of our community understand the importance of this election. And we go to the polls and vote. It's that important.
Yes, sir. Representative Summers?
I echo everything Representative Karriem just stated. This is the most important election of our lifetime. And the reason why we continue to state that is because, voting is a team sport. And voting is our birthright. As American citizens, we have a right that a lot of people across this globe don't have. As United States citizens, we have the ability to go and elect the individuals that serve in positions that have a direct influence on what happens in our lives, but not just in our lives, but in the next generation and future generations to come. What we've heard from the former president, who is the Republican candidate, are actions to take away our freedoms, are actions that will set us back over 100 years. We're looking at a pre-Reconstruction period if we don't do the right thing by electing individuals that have our best interest. And I know we pay a lot of attention to the presidential election, and the presidential election is key because what happens on the federal level has a direct impact on what happens in the state level. But we also want to encourage people to vote down ballot. On the ballot this November, you're going to have a U.S. Senate race. The U.S. Senate determines the individuals that are appointed to our Supreme Court. We could be looking at two individuals coming on to the Supreme Court, and we know how important that court plays in protecting our freedoms and defending our freedoms or rolling back those thereof. We also are going to have all 4 U.S. congressmen on the ballot. You may have a Mississippi Supreme Court justice position on the ballot. You may have an election commissioner position on the ballot. You may have Court of Appeals on the ballot and other school district positions on this ballot. So it's important, yes, that we vote for president, but we also vote down ballot because those individuals have even more of an impact on what happens in Mississippi, and particularly those congressional positions have an impact on what happens in Mississippi. So definitely have your voting plan in place. Make sure you know where your voting precinct is. I know in Hinds County, we've had many changes to precincts. Know where your voting precinct is. Know if you're an active voter. Be sure to take your ID with you. Know what's on the ballot. Familiarize yourself with that, and then be prepared to get out the vote.
I mean, that's such a great response and such wisdom. I mean, literally, my next two questions were about this very thing. You kind of really literally answered the question I was about to ask, because I was literally about to ask about down ballot races. And with that in mind, why do you all think that down ballot races aren't paid attention to? Why do you all think that, or if they are, they may not seem to be the big topic of conversation, but why do you think those kind of go under the radar and then we start seeing a lot of things happen in our community? And you can start with the answer, Representative Summers, because you're kind of already talking about that.
Yeah, so I think that people don't get so excited or informed about the other positions on the ballot is because they're not exposed to those positions so much so as the presidential candidates. If you turn on any news channel, if you read any newspaper, if you're on social media, generally you're going to hear more about Vice President Kamala Harris and the former president running for this office. The other candidates, such as U.S. Senate, congressmen, and et cetera, they may not necessarily have the budget, the amount of money in their coffers in order to reach to a large degree the number of voters that they need to reach in order to inform them about their campaign. And then the other side of this, and Representative Karriem would probably agree to this, is that we don't teach civics anymore. And a lot of people just don't understand the way that our system plays out. Of course, we need a person in that president's seat that understands why it's important that we have reproductive justice and understands why we need money for our infrastructure and our educational system. But the president can't do anything without Congress. Yeah. Congress is responsible for passing the bills that are on the president's agenda. A lot of people say, well, if Vice President Kamala Harris wanted to do all of these things, why didn't she do it when she was vice president? And it's simply because they don't understand how those roles function in our government. So we have to continue to educate our communities about these positions and help them to understand why they don't just stop at the top of the ticket, but they go all the way down and even turn, because they may have to flip the page and go all the way down on that side too before they submit that ballot.
Yeah, and Lee, if I could just interject, if you don't mind, piggybacking off of my colleague, and we can't just wait to an election year. We have to constantly teach our community year round about civics, civic engagement, municipal. The mayor doesn't do what your county commissioner or county supervisor. They don't have the same job title. They're in different branches of government. We have to take time to educate our community year round, and so they can make informed decisions. And I just want to kind of bag up, if I may. We can't take elections for granted either.
Sure.
The first Black that was born in America was William Tucker. He was born to indentured servants. And if you look, William Tucker was 44 years old when slavery as we know it was introduced. Now, we don't know whatever happened to William Tucker, but I bet when he was being raised with indentured servant parents, he never knew that before his lifetime was over with, that he would be in chattel slavery, bondage, chains. So we can't take anything for granted. I don't mean to use that such an extreme example, but we can't take things for granted. We have to go vote, and we have to be persistent and intentional with our vote and putting people in office who reflect our wishes and what we want to see in our community.
Yeah, that's such a great response. That puts the responsibility on us to be aware of what's happening in our communities, and just talking about that specifically. Since we're talking about our state, and you all are people that represent different parts of our state, what is on the ballot for Mississippi specifically this year? I think sometimes we can get so focused on the national aspect of it, but just from what you all are seeing in the legislature and just conversations you have with other elected officials, what are some of the things that you both feel like are on the ballot specifically for Mississippi? And Representative Kareem, you could start with that question.
Specifically on the ballot for Mississippi, I don't. It's no initiatives on the ballot this particular year. Help me out, Representative Summers.
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. So, as I stated previously, we have a U.S. Senate race that's on the ballot. We have all 4 congressmen that are going to be on the ballot. These are individuals that represent the state of Mississippi in U.S. Congress. We also have a Supreme Court justice position on the ballot, and depending on where you live, you may have a Supreme Court justice, Court of Appeals, etc. The judiciary, which is one branch of government, plays such an essential role in our system. For example, when we pass legislation on the state level in the Mississippi State Legislature, if an organization or an individual decides to challenge that legislation based on constitutional muster, at some point in time, that litigation could go all the way up to the Mississippi Supreme Court Justice. And then it could also go to the Court of Appeals, just depending on where it is in that process. So it's important that we have individuals in those positions that understand why we should protect our freedoms, but also can help to interpret the things that we pass, whether they be good, bad, or ugly. And we know that there are some things that we pass in the legislature, just because they pass, just because they become statute, doesn't necessarily mean that they are the right thing for Mississippi. So that's on the ballot. And then from a congressional standpoint, we always hear from, our top elected leaders here in the state of Mississippi about how well Mississippi is doing economically. The fact that unemployment rates are so low, the fact that we have so much funds in our reserves, and that's why we should eliminate the state income tax, etc. Well, the fact of the matter is that the reason why Mississippi is such in a good financial situation is because of what the Biden-Harris administration has been able to do. And the Biden-Harris administration, through many of its initiatives, they were passed because Congress passed them. These were not the Republicans who represent Mississippi that supported these initiatives. These were the Democrats. And so as a result of the infrastructure bill, as a result of the CHIPS Act, as a result of the Biden-Harris administration and Congress deciding that Jackson needed $800 million to help fix our sewer system. As a result of the broadband bill, Mississippi has been able to realize hundreds of millions of dollars. And now we're at a $1.8 billion revenue point because of what has happened in Washington, D.C. So when we think about how these positions play a role or how Mississippi is on the ballot, it's within these positions and the functions that they play in our government. Mississippi is a welfare state. And a lot of times our leadership, they don't want to admit that. They want to say that it's their efforts that they've done here in the state of Mississippi that have gotten us to the point. But we would not survive if it weren't for the federal government. And that's why we want people to vote down ballot and put responsible people in those positions to continue to help the state of Mississippi.
I mean, there's so much I can say about what you just said. Because we currently have somebody that is running to be reelected to their seat who voted against funding for FEMA literally last week. and related to helping people that were in need in a particular moment. But anytime the state gets money, they want to show up at events, want to be at ribbon cuttings, all those different times. It's fascinating that we love ribbon cuttings when it benefits us for PR. But when we get down to brass tacks, it's kind of like, I don't want to put my money where my mouth is. We could stay on that topic all day, but we're going to move on. I do have some other questions for you all, but I was sitting here thinking as you were talking, Representative Summers, I was thinking about how easy it is to, at least for most voters, to feel overwhelmed by the process. Could you, Representative Karriem, speak to how to motivate people to not get fatigued? Because it seems like right now there's a lot of information coming at us. I mean, I get text messages all the time about giving money, or doing something or engaging in a particular way. Could you, Representative Karriem, kind of speak to that fatigue and why, or how can we deal with that in our current moment?
Well, you have to meet people where they are, and you have to let people know how the legislation will affect their everyday life. While Representative Summers was talking, I couldn't help but think about us in the chamber. Now it's a national discussion with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Well, guess what? It started right there in the House of Representatives chamber, and it didn't change the whole trajectory of the whole country.
Yep.
And it just didn't start that session. It started the session before. So look, we just have to let people understand, it may seem overwhelming, but, the person you have in office will determine whether you have a gravel road or a paved road. And you have to put it where the goats could get it.
Sure.
And you have to get involved, and you can't just play Monday morning quarterback as it relates to politics either. You have to be involved, and again, you have to be intentional. This particular legislative session, we changed the formula of education. We're putting more money this particular year in education than ever before. However, it's not mandatory that same level of funding will go in every year. So we can have the same problem as we had previously with not funding the previous formula if those same people have the same mindset. So look, we just have to put it and explain it where people understand it and make it palatable, that government reflects the community, and you have to be involved in it. You got to. There's nowhere around it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we're going to take a break for just a moment, and we'll be right back after. Want to promote your business, products, or services? Email me at scottconsultations@gmail.com. I would love to push forward the banner of what you're trying to accomplish, whether it is a product, whether it's your services or your business. I would love to work with you and be an advocate for what you're doing in your respective spaces. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you. And we're back. I'm so grateful to Representative Karriem and Representative Summers for being on with me, talking about just the importance of voting and the importance of this election and all those different things. And so we're going to continue the conversation. One of the things that has been on my mind is, in particular, Mississippi is not voting for our statewide elected officials to 3 years from now, right? We just had an election last year. But I want to ask you all, as it relates to this, kind of shifting the conversation from just voting in particular, but some of the things that could be happening to prepare for this next cycle. What are your thoughts about some of the possible shifts in possible political participation in Mississippi? And what are you all seeing as some of the things that we need to be working towards for the 2027 election cycle here in Mississippi? Anywhere you can go.
Yeah, so two things come to mind. The first is the governor's seat. So, this is Tate Reeves' last term. He's we call it a lame duck because he can't run for re-election. We have term limits for the governor's seat. And so we know we're going to have a new governor. Now, of course, from our perspective, we want the new governor to be a Democrat. During the 2023 cycle, we came very close to that. We are narrowing the margin as we go. So Brandon Presley, who was the Democratic nominee, lost by 27,000 votes. Now, when you think about 27,000 votes and the fact that Hinds County, which is a majority Black county, clearly a Democratic county, and is the most populous county in the state, Hinds County could have made up that difference. Now, we had a lot of issues happen with that election, like running out of ballots, etc., that may have played a role in folks not being able to cast their ballot. But the bottom line is that we have an opportunity over the next 3 years to get a Democrat elected. The second thought is in many of the legislative races that had Republican incumbents, we had no Democratic opposition. And so as we move forward, we have to make sure that every single seat is challenged. Now, we know that there are some districts that are just not winnable, according to the data, whether it be the BVAP or whether it be the voter turnout from the last election. But we have to give people an alternative. We've seen a lot of the progressive measures in the state legislature be dead on arrival. They never make it out of committee. And it's because of the fact that we're in a supermajority Republican legislature, which means that if you have a supermajority, that means you have a superminority. And the way that we shift that, the way that we change that is that we have to get more Democrats elected, which means that we need more Democrats running for office. So in 3 more years, all statewide offices will be open. That's from state governor on down, treasurer, auditor, secretary of state, lieutenant governor, all the House seats, all the Senate seats, attorney general. If I didn't say auditor. So we got to make sure that we have folks ready to run come 2027.
And if I can just add, I everything she said, I totally agree with it. But we need massive voter registration, but we also need massive resources. As I look across the state and analyze the different elections, that's tends to be some of the problem competing with the war chests of some of the incumbents on these statewide candidates. We need resources. We need national funds to come into Mississippi, or just a steady stream of funding that will help us to compete, because we have some good people that can fill these seats in Mississippi, but we just need the resources to compete against these enormous war chests that some of these incumbents have.
Yeah, I think that's insightful. Still along that line, how are you all? I mean, this may be some inside baseball kind of conversations, but you mentioned, Representative Summers, some of the need for people to run in every space, and as you were just talking about, Representative Karriem, like it takes money to run a campaign, how how do you convince people that they are the right candidate to even participate? Because there may be some apprehension from people to just literally like engage or think, well, I I know that somebody probably should run against this person. They've done nothing, or they've been in this seat for a long time, or whatever the case might be. How do you what are you all's thoughts? And you could share Representative Kareem about this, but you both can. But what are your thoughts about just getting people motivated to think that they are the right candidate or possibly a candidate for those seats in general?
I don't think it's hard to get anybody to run for office. I think it's getting the right people to run for office.
Yes, sir.
People who have those qualifications to compete. Again, as was stated earlier, what I find is the resources. I think the governor election was millions and millions of dollars. And the only way that Brandon Presley was able to compete with the incumbent governor and come as close as he did to actually almost winning, he had the resources to compete. He ran radio, TV. His ground game was good. I think it was some internal issues that maybe cost him the election. But again, I think it's not hard to find people to run. It's finding those qualified people. And one thing in the legislature, we've had a couple of issues where people who are on the retirement system, they're not able to run because they could lose their retirement or stop their benefits from coming in, and that has been an issue. So you have good people out there. It's just filling those seats and providing those resources.
Representative Summers?
Representative Kareem is absolutely right. The Democratic Party has not done a great job of nurturing potential candidates. We see on the other side where, a person can be in a local office, all of a sudden they become treasurer, and then they become lieutenant governor, and then they become governor, because they've been nurtured and supported along the way. I think that there are individuals that want to run and can run, but just don't have, as Representative Kareem said, have the resources or the infrastructure in place that helps them to be successful in their campaigning. The other piece to it is that we have to encourage more women to run for office.
Absolutely.
And that is beginning to happen. We're seeing advocacy organizations create training programs specifically for women, women of color, showing them the process and encouraging them to run. Because, we have been dominated by a system that has pretty much been that has been ran by white men. And as a result of that, we do not see the kinds of systems that are designed to help people. We actually heard testimony yesterday during our TANF hearing about how the system is designed to keep people in poverty. Mississippi leads the nation when it comes to children's poverty. We lead the nation in gun violence against children. We lead the nation in maternal mortality and infant mortality. And so we know the data, we see the numbers, we understand that but we have to put people in position to get those things done and to create systemic change. One of the reasons, the main reason why one of the reasons why I decided to run was because somebody asked me to run. It wasn't a job that I was necessarily gunning for. I thought I was going to be a journalist for the rest of my life. But my mentor saw something in me, saw leadership in me, and asked me to consider running for office. So when we see people that demonstrate those kinds of qualities, we have to also be willing to ask them. Now, everybody that is a leader does not understand leadership. And far too often, we see people, particularly from our side, from the Democratic side, of folks who, because we're at the last minute of qualification, we end up picking people in our contact list to run for office. That makes us ineffective. And so we are beginning now that we have outstanding leadership at the Democratic Party now, under the tutelage of our colleague, Representative Sheck Taylor, who is the chairman of the Democratic Party. We are now all hands on deck with strengthening that infrastructure and putting together the components that we need in order to identify and prepare Democrats to run for office and win office.
Wow. And Lee, let me just piggyback off of her. Culturally, we cannot continue with the Pharaoh mentality that when we die, taking the treasure, the jewels, the scepter, we're taking it all that to the tomb with us. We have to be in a position to train and, as she stated, mentor our succession plan, and to make sure that that the seats that we serve and positions that we serve in, we make it a little bit better than how we found it. And we just have to culturally get away from that mindset in our community. We can't have the Pharaoh mentality. We got to let Pharaoh go.
Yes, sir. That's absolute wisdom. And that is a great segue to my next question, because I was going to ask you all, what are your hopes for the present and future of political action in Mississippi? What are some of the things that you're like, yeah, I'm a firm believer that these things can happen and transpire in our state? And I'll start with you, Representative Summers.
I am a firm believer that we can do everything that we do to create the conditions by which our young people intentionally and deliberately decide that they want to remain in Mississippi and raise their family in Mississippi and work in Mississippi and invest in Mississippi. I truly believe that we can have a reverse migration, that we can have individuals that have gone to the Midwest or the East Coast or West Coast, come back home and have a homecoming in Mississippi. And we can begin to change the political dynamic just as we did during the 1964 Freedom Summer that will change the country. I firmly believe that. Of course, that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of hands on deck, but I certainly think that it's possible. Now, what do we need to make that happen? We need people to understand that their voice is their power, and that they cannot give that power away by saying, I'm going to sit this election out, or I don't like either one of the candidates, or it's a woman running for office and I don't support women, running for leadership positions. That is not going to help us get to where we need. As I mentioned during my introduction, I'm the mother of 3 sons. All right. I'm the mother of 3 Black boys that are going to be Black men in a state and in a country that has shown itself to not give a damn about my children. Okay. So as Representative, and that's why I love having these conversations with Representative Karriem, because he always says something that teaches me something. But he said a quote several years ago that I always recall. And he said that our charge is different because our circumstance is different. We cannot just live this life arbitrarily and not think that our action, and particularly our inaction, don't play a role in what happens in our lives, our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives, and future generations, we don't know. We have to be active participants in the system. Until we can overturn this system, the system is what it is. And we be intelligent enough to understand there is no moving forward without us. And so, in other words, we have to, as I stated, we got to be players of the game. Understand that your economic power is rooted in your political power.
Yep.
And so if you are not participating in our democracy, you're effectively saying that I don't care what happens, you can do whatever you want to do. That's not how this system works. Okay. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. You better believe that the people that are in position are looking at the voter turnout numbers. And based on those numbers, that's where they're sending resources. That's where they are passing policy that benefit communities. That's where they're passing appropriations bills to give local project money to. And so if you are not turning out the vote, if you're not showing that you are a vital piece of this puzzle, then you will be ignored. So we've got to do better than what we're doing. So, my belief is that my goal is that my folk, I'm talking about Black folk now, my folk and my community across the state understand that you are significant to what happens in this state if you decide to participate in this system.
Representative Kareem.
He's absolutely right. As she was talking, I couldn't help but think, I'm excited about our young folk. I really am. You have some young people that are very engaged, if and they're thirsty for knowledge. And the work that we do at the Mississippi State Capitol is not about today. It's about tomorrow. And we have to provide the policy to put in place to talk about those things that Representative Summers just made mention of, so our kids can have a family and stay in Mississippi. I can't help but think about my two younger children who worry Representative Summers to death, especially when my son was at Jackson State, but they are heavily engaged. And I know a lot of that is because of the influence our family have on their service to others, but they inspire other folk at the school to be engaged as well. So we can't give up on our young folk, but we have to do the job that we were sent to Jackson to do, and that's provide policy that can change the quality of life for our future generations. And sometimes it's going to get ugly because there's a certain element in our state that don't want you to have a future in the state. And let's just be real. There's a certain element that don't want you to have nothing. They don't think you deserve anything. But I think our young folks feel differently. And I'm one who used the analogy, if a person is thirsty, as I refer to our young folk, and you give them dirty water to drink, guess what? They're going to drink the dirty water. But if you provide a clean glass of water, of quality of life, good policy, a good infrastructure for them to learn and grow, guess what? They're going to drink that water too. And we'll have a bright future here in Mississippi. And I feel strongly for that. Every day we go to work, it's not about today. It's about putting things in place for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's such wisdom. So again, thank you all for your time. I'm getting to the last few questions. I kind of shared this stuff with you before we got on here, but Representative Kareem, what are some of the things that you're doing to grow as far as personal development? Like, what are some of the things you're reading, some of the things you're listening to? How are you investing into yourself?
Well, look, again, my whole purpose is service. Um, my mother always told us, coming from a single parent home, it was six of us. Um, my mother had to go back to school just to get her GED to help take care of us. And I'm inspired by her sacrifice, but her willingness to serve. That has always been in the forefront. I can remember as a little boy, her cooking Thanksgiving dinner for homeless people here in Columbus. And being brought up around that, for the past 15 to 16 years, I've done a Mother's Day luncheon, free luncheon we give back to the community, honoring our mothers in our community. We do a festival every year, first weekend in October. I've been doing it for the last 21 years. The festival's been going on for almost 40 years. Free event. We bring in national artists from Casey and JoJo to Genuine to Juvenile, just to name a few. But it's a good event, free to the public. Real love in the environment is just, I mean, you can't ask for a better environment. So service to others. I'm always reading. I'm a big social media guy, and I'm always on it. But when I find something real intriguing, I go down those rabbit holes, and I can be up for hours thinking about reading about Kemet, ancient Egypt, Africa. Those things, along with history, intrigues my inner being. And I love, 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 love music. Music is my foundation. And, I was thinking, if he asked me what's my favorite song that describes me, what I'm gonna say. I reached out to Representative Summers. I said, what song describes you? She thought I don't know what she thought I was doing. She was like, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this guy? I said, that's a question. But anyway, I'm like, heal the world, but I'm also like, fight the power, because you need both of them. You need caring, compassion.
That's good. That's good, Kabir.
Yeah, you need caring and compassion, but you have to be ready to stand on business too if it comes down to it. But if all else fails, you have to fight the power that be. So those are just, a few things that motivates, that brings in perspective who I am as a person. But we can never stop striving for better for our people. We can never forget when we're in those rooms and the doors are shut who we're there representing. Because being a Black man and a Black member of the Mississippi legislature, we're all Black Mississippians have as being their voice. And when them cigars are lit and those conversations are talking, we can't have a double conversation. As I told you earlier, we have to stand on business and be who the people want us to be at that state capitol.
Representative Summers, you can answer all three questions like Representative Green.
Okay, so one of the questions was what I am doing to improve myself, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And the second question was the song, and the third question was
how are you paying it forward? So
how are you paying for it? Okay, got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have been very blessed to be in a lot of different leadership development programs. So currently, I'm serving in 2 fellowships. One is through the Future Caucus, which is an organization that is designed for young electeds. And the goal is to build bipartisanship across the aisles on legislation that we both care about. And so I'm currently a maternal health fellow for the Future Caucus. Opportunity to go to Detroit a few weeks ago and visit the birth center that they're creating there. And I also got an opportunity to visit a model for childcare, and it's a pre-K, was actually an infant childcare all the way through high school.
Wow.
So they are, literally with those children, with those families, pre-K through 18. And it was a very impressive model. And so that's one of the things I'm involved in. The other fellowship that I'm in is through the Milbank Memorial Fund. And that organization is focused on health equity and population health. And so both of those fellowships really go hand in hand, because I am very concerned about the infant and maternal mortality issue in the state of Mississippi. Particularly given the fact that if I had a daughter or granddaughters, they would not have the same rights as I had, because the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade as a result of legislation, as Representative Karriem said, was passed in the Mississippi House. And so, if we're going to be concerned about making sure that women have children, then we need to make sure that the women are healthy enough to have the children, and that the children get what they need in order to live healthy lives. So that's what I'm concerned about. So that's one of the things that I do to continue my leadership development. I really enjoy reading. I'm a history buff. I like to read articles. And right now I'm reading this book called Behind the Dream, The Making of the Speech That Transformed a Nation, by Clarence B. Jones. And he was one of the advisors to Dr. Martin Luther King. And one of the things that I notated in the book, he talks about A. Philip Randolph, and some people may know about A. Philip Randolph, but A. Philip Randolph was like the mentor to all of them when they were preparing for the March on Washington. And I've said nothing counts but pressure and more pressure.
Wow.
And so in the context of our conversation around voting, when we're voting, we're putting pressure on the individuals that represent us to do the right thing. And that's why we all must get out to vote. The song. So it took me a while to come up with something. But the song that I came up with, and I'm a neo soul kind of girl. I'm a millennial. So I like, real smooth kind of music. I grew up under my dad, who loved listening to jazz. And so that's just the kind of thing that I like. But I'm from the bottom too. Started from the bottom. Now we're here. So I like a little music every now and then too. But the song is titled "The Fact Is I Need You" by Jill Scott. I want you all to pull up this song. The reason why this song touches me is because it talks about all the things that a woman is, right? So, she says, I can pay my own light bill. I can go get my nails done. I can go get my hair done. I can pay my rent. I can go get my groceries. But at the end of it all, I still need you. And she's talking about the man. We still need our men. And as a mother and as a wife of 3 sons, I understand, yes, I am an independent woman. Yes, I can be a state representative. She even says I can be a congresswoman. I can be a garbage woman, all these kinds of things. But we still need our men. And at this point of time, we need our men terribly. We are missing our strong Black men, role models in our communities. And I think that contributes to why we see so much, just so many issues within the Black community, because we are missing Black men. And we can have a much longer conversation about why that is, because we know the system has designed it so that we can't have our men in our homes if we're on governmental assistance, or they've been caught up in the criminal justice system because of the things that we have done or haven't done from a policy making perspective, et cetera. But that's the song. So listen to that. And more importantly, read the lyrics, because they're so true. I know that I know I'm an independent woman. I'm a strong woman. Kabir, I always like to say I might be 5'2", but I stand 9 feet tall. But the fact of the matter is that I couldn't do any of this if I didn't have my husband right there with me. And so I'm very thankful for that. And then the third thing is how I pay it forward. Representative Kabir Karriem talked succession plan. And so I understand that I'm not trying to be in this position until I die. That's not what I'm here for. And so every session, I make it a point to have an intern, particularly a young Black woman as my intern. I actually have an intern right now. She's a student at Millsaps College.
Wow.
And I have another intern during the session from Jackson State University. But the goal of those internships is to expose them to what we do in the state legislature, so that they can become so interested and so curious and see the actual sausage making process that they may even consider running for office. And I hope, my youngest son, Mathis, who is 9, said he's going to take my place as state representative. But either way, I'm trying to expose as many young people to this process as possible. I served as a legislative page when I was to my predecessor, who then asked me to run for his seat. Wow. So it makes a difference. So that's how I continue to pay it forward.
Well, Representative Zakiya Summers, Representative Kabir Karriem, thank you both for giving me your time to just talk about why the election is important, but also just your hopes for our future. So I'm so appreciative to both of you, and I've been inspired by your wisdom, your sage wisdom, and your encouragement for us to get involved on November 5th. So thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. If you want to get more information and connect with me, visit me at www.leeascott.com or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. So thank you for watching. Much love, and let's get started.